Welcome everyone to another episode of Price Targets with your host Bitcoin Jack. Welcome back. It's Monday. The market has been incredibly slow again. ETH is making a little bit of a rally. Bitcoin dominance has traded into levels we spoke of last week. So there should technically be a resistance for alts versus BTC now. And other than that, Bitcoin just has been squeezing further and further, very little volatility. So we're going to be talking about all that. It's going to be a pretty short video probably because there's not much to be said, especially in regards to Bitcoin. It's just very indecisive, but I'll share my updated view from last week. And first of all, please, your attention for the sponsor who's making these videos possible, Prime XBT. They're an exchange, and if you sign up with them, you get a 50% deposit bonus up to 0.5 BTC. There's some conditions that apply, so please make sure you're aware of them. But that's a little gift from them to you, and I hope you will enjoy that. So if you use the promo code BitcoinJack, with the link in the description below and visible in the watermark, you can get this bonus. Thank you, Prime, and let's dive into Bitcoin. We are still within the resistance here and the weekly demand here. Not much to be updated. We have a kind of symmetrical triangle that we spoke of last week as well. I don't particularly like symmetrical triangles. I have a few IDs around symmetrical triangles. If you go to different exchanges, you'll be able to draw this differently. And that's just simply because liquidity spreads at these extreme pivots may have been slightly different across different exchanges. So the image painted is, it's can be interpreted a little bit different on every exchange. That's just the way it is right now. A few things about symmetrical triangles. Usually, statistically, they tend to break or continue / expand, whatever you want to call it, into the direction they had when price came into it. So basically, this is the direction, consolidation, and then it does something like this. The other thing about symmetrical triangles is that in general, if they occur in, I think in general it is applicable. But if you use Elliott wave theory, what you'll often see is you have a first wave, second corrective wave, third wave, and then especially when it occurs in the fourth wave, usually it's the final wave. But also if it occurs in like an ABC correction, usually the triangle itself, the consolidation itself, does imply that a continuation of the direction happens, but it's also usually the last move of the larger trend. So if the larger trend is from up here at 65k, then if this does come down, it is to be assumed, according to Elliott wave theory, that this is going to be the last move, right? So I tweeted a little thing yesterday about how that could play out. There was no chart with it, but I said option A, if a move lower, and this is indeed a symmetrical triangle, and it will behave as a symmetrical triangle, as a textbook symmetrical triangle. Then we have three flavors. Flavor A is a truncated move. So basically, the final move down will not exceed the lowest point of the fourth wave, which is this move. The option B is it's going to sweep the lows right here. So essentially that would mean instead of bouncing before, it just comes up here around 27, 28, 29, 30, and then comes back up. And then the third option is full-blown capitulation, which is always hard to predict. Kind of depends on how illiquid the market becomes and how much open interest there is to be liquidated. The good thing is that it seems that on most future exchanges, derivatives, etc., that most of the participants are very neutral, maybe even more bearish. So the funding is neutral to bearish. That means that there's not a lot of longs to be squeezed here that then still only capitulate. But then again, this market has been dominated by the spot market for, I don't know, over a year right now. So I'm not really sure how much that does tell us. And how deep that goes, I don't know. But, like I said in the last couple of weeks, if this doesn't become option A or B, then there's levels below which then need to give confidence in the way in the way price interacts with them. So basically here is a little consolidation, and then obviously a larger one here, which is particularly small actually when you compare it to all the price action. But it's also the previous all-time high region. So essentially below 20k would probably have to bounce, but I'm not really sure if we can get there. Order books across exchanges are stacked on the buy side on average. Also, that doesn't really mean a thing, because if there's a lot of sellers, then things will just come down. In my opinion, it's really hard to kind of predict what's going to happen. The most important thing that I'm looking at is this trend line to actually be broken. So essentially, once this starts to come down and then manages to overtake this trend line, that's a pretty decent signal that this is going to be trying to get some relief, and any relief up to 50k would be logical at some point. So market structure up here has to be retested, hasn't really been retested. Could be as low as 47, but it just makes sense that price needs to come up here and test this supply eventually. So the most logical thing I'm currently expecting is that this will come down. I'm not really sure how far down. Could be any of the scenarios I mentioned, and then a relief rally, which doesn't necessarily indicate that the bull market is back on, but obviously, if you rally from 30 to 50, that's a pretty sizey profit you'll be making. So I hope that makes sense. Obviously, there's a situation possible where this just keeps on dicking around in a sideways range, that this is not at all a symmetrical triangle. And to be honest, we're reaching the apex where the lines of a symmetrical triangle converge. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Ideally, we would start to see volatility over the next couple of days, certainly this week, to confirm this is actually a symmetrical triangle, or raise the odds that it is. And then, so just a few thoughts more on that is that this is, you're pretty much knife catching here, you're pretty much knife catching here, you're pretty much knife catching here all the way. So either, get some really bad sting bits in, or wait for, something that really kind of gives confidence on the bottom. And the other thing that could happen, which, at this point, in my opinion, is not as likely, but it certainly is possible, that price just comes back up here. If that's the case, maybe there's going to be, a last little bit kind of a pullback, but then I think the bottom is in for now, and this is going to rally up to 50-ish, and then probably later on come back down here. But that's a lot of future talk. So essentially for me, I'm going to be patient and wait until, this either shows a giant massive capitulation, or clean reversal signs. If this thing decides to come down another 50%, it's always possible. We've seen it happen in March 2020, and you just don't want to be on the wrong side of that. If you want to start buying spots, sure, anywhere below 30 just seems like a decent opportunity, but on margin, I think it's just wise to move slow. All right. Then this is a chart we looked at last week. Bitcoin dominance. It came back into 786 level that we outlined. It would make sense for this to start bouncing down, and that means that ETH BTC and other alts are reaching into resistance. I should see some kind of pullback. Right now on the daily time frame, there's not much of a short setup yet. Can look at a lower time frame, but I don't see it here. I wouldn't short this just blindly because there is a resistance up here. Ideally, like I said last week, we would have, visited these levels. If we visit these levels and then come back up, that would be give me, I have confidence to actually get long on the retest here. And then if we come back up, that would give me confidence that once we go through or battle with this supply again, that increasing exposure at some point for a breakout makes sense. For now, it could break out. It's just not a setup that I like longing, and I didn't get my long setup here at the bottom, but I'm also not eager to short this unless, a low time frame setup with a deviation occurs. So essentially, I would need to see at least something like this, and then a retest, and then something that comes lower, where we kind of break the trend line as well, get rejected by it, and then look for an opportunity to short it. But for now, I don't think there's any reason to even remotely think of it. And maybe this is just, continuation to the upside. Not really sure. I hope that makes sense. 12 minutes in, and hopefully we can get a little bit of a clear look on what Bitcoin's going to do. I hope my story about what I'm looking at here for Bitcoin made sense. I think it's just wise to be very careful and patient in this current market environment and wait for the confirmations I talked about. So hopefully you'll be able to enjoy some free time like I'm doing, and I'll catch you on Wednesday. Peace.